And we're going to continue with the 10th chapter of the third book of A Tale of Two Cities, The Substance of the Shadow. Dr. Manette is at the trial of his son-in-law. He's been listed as one of the main complainants against him, and they discovered something that he wrote that he hid, and he is being made to read it aloud. So all of this is in Dr. Manette's voice, and there are some awesome paragraph breaks when he had to hide this piece of paper in the chimney. He was taken off the side of the road many years ago by two men that took him to where a woman was being restrained. And he just discovered there was a second patient that he was supposed to look at besides this restrained woman. The other patient lay in a back room across the second staircase, which was a species of loft over a stable. There was a low plastered ceiling to a part of it. The rest was open to the ridge of the tiled roof, and there were beams across. Hay and straw was stored in that portion of the place, faggots for firing, and a heap of apples in sand. I had to pass through that part to get to the other. My memory is circumstantial and unshaken. I try it with these details, and I see them all in my cell in the Bastille, near the close of the 10th year of my captivity, as I saw them all that night. On some hay on the ground, with a cushion thrown under his head, lay a handsome peasant boy, a boy of not more than 17 at the most. He lay on his back with his teeth set, his right hand clenched on his breast, and his glaring eyes looking straight upward. I could not see where his wound was as I kneeled on one knee over him, but I could see that he was dying of a wound from a sharp point. "I am a doctor, my poor fellow," I said. "Let me examine it." "I do not want to be examined," he answered. "Let it be." It was under his hand, and I soothed him to let me move his hand away. It was a sword thrust received from 20 to 24 hours before, but no skill could have saved him if it had been looked to with delay. He was then dying fast. As I turned my eyes to the elder brother, I saw him looking down at this handsome boy whose life was ebbing out, as if he were a wounded bird or hare or rabbit, not at all as if he were a fellow creature. "How is this being done, monsieur?" said I. "A crazed young common dog, a serf, forced my brother to draw upon him, and has fallen by my brother's sword, like a gentleman." There was no touch of pity, sorrow, or kindred humanity in this answer. The speaker seemed to acknowledge that it was inconvenient to have that different order of creature dying there, that it would have been better if he had died in the usual obscure routine of his vermin kind. He was quite incapable of any compassionate feeling about the boy, or about his fate. The boy's eyes had slowly moved to him as if he had spoken, and now they slowly moved to me. "Doctor, they are proud, these nobles, but we common dogs are proud too sometimes. They plunder us, outrage us, beat us, kill us. But we have a little pride left sometimes. Have you seen her, doctor?" The shrieks and the cries were audible there, though subdued by the distance. He referred to them as if she were lying in our presence. "I have," I said. "I have seen her. She is my sister, doctor. They have had their shameful rights, these nobles, in the modesty of virtue of our sisters, many years, but we have had good girls among us, I know it, and have heard my father say so. She was a good girl. She was betrothed to a good young man, too, a tenant of his. We were all tenants of his, that man who stands there. The other is his brother, the worst of a bad race." It was with the greatest difficulty that the boy gathered bodily force to speak, but his spirit broke with a dreadful emphasis. "We were so robbed by that man who stands there, as all we common dogs are by those superior beings, taxed by him without mercy, obliged to work for him without pay, obliged to grind our corn at his mill, obliged to feed scores of his tame birds on our wretched crops, and forbidden for our lives to keep a single tame bird of our own, pillaged and plundered to that degree that when we chanced to have a bit of meat, we ate it in fear, with the door barred and our shutters closed, that his people should not see it and take it from us. I say we were so robbed and hunted, and were made so poor that our father told us it was a dreadful thing to bring a child into the world. and that we should most pray for, and that what we should most pray for was that our women might be barren and our miserable race die out. I have never before seen the sense of being oppressed bursting forth like a fire. I had supposed that it must be latent in the people somewhere, but I had never seen it break out until I saw it in the dying boy. Nevertheless, doctor, my sister married. He was ailing at the time, poor fellow, and she married her lover, that she might tend and comfort him in our cottage, our dog hut, as that man would call it. She had been married many weeks when that man's brother saw her and admired her, and asked the man to lend her to him. For what are husbands among us? He was willing enough, but my sister was good and virtuous, and hated his brother with a hatred as strong as mine. What did the two of them to persuade her husband to use his influence with her, to make her willing? The boy's eyes, which had been fixed on mine, slowly turned to the looker-on, and I saw in the two faces that all he said was true, the two opposing kinds of pride confronting one another. I can see, even in this Bastille, the gentleman's all negligent indifference, the peasants' all trodden-down sentiment, and passionate revenge. You know, doctor, that it is among the rights of these nobles to harness us, common dogs, to carts and drive us. They so harnessed him and drove him. You know that it is among the rights to keep us in their grounds all night, quieting the frogs in order that their noble sleep may not be disturbed. They kept him out in the unwholesome mists at night, and ordered him back into his harness in the day. But he was not persuaded, no. Taken out of the harness one day at noon to feed, if he could find food, he sobbed 12 times, once for every stroke of the bell, and died on her bosom. Nothing human could have held life in the boy but his determination to tell all his wrong. He forced back the gathering shadows of death, as he forced his clenched right hand to remain clenched and to cover his wound. Then, with the man's permission, and even with his aid, his brother took her away. In spite of what I know, she must have told his brother, and what that is will not be long unknown to you, doctor, if it is now. His brother took her away for his pleasure and diversion. For a little while I saw her pass me on the road. When I took the tidings home, our father's heart burst. He never spoke one of the words that filled it. I took my young sister, for I have another, to a place beyond the reach of this man, and where at least she will not be his vassal. Then I tracked the brother here, and last night climbed in, a common dog, but sword in hand. Where is the loft window? It was somewhere here. The room was darkness to his sight. The world was narrowing around him. I glanced about me, and saw that the hay and straw were trampled over the floor, as if there had been a struggle. She heard me and ran in. I told her not to come near us till he was dead. He came in and first tossed me some pieces of money, then struck me with a whip, but I, though a common dog, so struck at him as to make him draw. Let him break into as many pieces as he will. The sword that he stained with my common blood he drew to defend himself, thrust at me with all his skill for his life. My glance had fallen, but a few moments before, on the fragments of a broken sword lying among the hay. That weapon was a gentleman's. In another place lay an old sword that seemed to have been a soldier's. Now lift me up, doctor. Lift me up. Where is he? He is not here, I said, supporting the boy, and thinking that he referred to the brother. Ah! Proud as these nobles are. He was afraid to see me. Where is the man who was here? Turn my face to him. I did so, raising the boy's head against my knee, but, invested for the moment with extraordinary power, he raised himself completely, obliging me to rise too, or I could not have still supported him. Marquis, said the boy, turned to him with his eyes opened wide and his right hand raised. In the days when all these things are to be answered for, I summon you and yours to the last of your bad race to answer for them. I mark this cross of blood upon you as a sign that I do it. In the days when all these things are to be answered for, I summon your brother, the worst of the bad race, to answer for them separately. I mark this cross of blood upon him as a sign that I do it. Twice he put his hand into the wound in his breast, and with his forefinger drew a cross in the air. He stood for an instant, with the finger yet raised, and as it dropped, he dropped with it, and I laid him down dead, and we will pause there.